Here we go. Okay, so this is going to be Patzer's Playground episode 21. 21 is a special number because it is the age in which a young person turns into a young adult. So in commemoration of one of our very own recently turning the age of 21, we're going to look at a game of his past. See if you can guess who I'm talking about by the opening. Well, I think you guys should be able to guess. You got a bird. Back when the bird was fashionable. Okay, so we've gotten out of the opening, and this position is fairly normal. But what do you guys like for white here? So those of you who have been able to predict whose game this is, I'm sure you're quite correct. But let's see what happened. This is from his youth, before he knew better. But okay, what should I play here? So I kind of like the move 95 here, just to kind of cement the knight in the center. Now you have ideas to maybe play queen e1, and, get your queen to this side of the board. Maybe d3. But this 95 is nice because, black would never want to take this, because after pawn takes, this file is opened up. And this pawn on e5 is strong. But okay, white played bishop e5, which makes some sense too. He wants to trade off this bishop for this knight and establish a knight on e5 unmolested. It's a bit of a tempo, loss, but nothing too fatal. It should be okay. Okay, so bishop d7, so he snaps off c6. And now that he's taken the knight, this 95 makes sense. But here he plays d3, b6. And now, again he can play 95, which now gains a tempo. But if he wasn't going to play that, what should he play here? So he needs complete development here. So he should probably develop this knight. To what square should he develop it? So he should probably develop it to the d2 square, so it's not blocking his bishop. And then from d2 it can head to f3, and then from f3 it can head to e5. So instead he's played h3, which is a bit of a tempo waster. Queen c7. Okay, now he finally plays 95. Okay, but the problem is white is kind of not taking into account what black wants to do here. And the move black wants to play is this move d4. It kind of meets two goals. One is that it blocks in this bishop, and two is it opens up this bishop. So white should always be kind of cognizant of this potential d4 idea. And so he should kind of take steps to prevent it. Okay, so after bishop b7, knight d2, rook d8. Okay. So here again, he should either play a move like knight df3 to kind of challenge a4, or sorry, d4, or to play a4. And then the idea is on d4 and a capture on d4, he wants to play bishop a3 and kind of get the bishop outside of the black pawn chain. But after knight g4, d4, and now all of a sudden this bishop is menacing. This bishop is stuck. So I think already here black has a slight edge, mostly thanks to white's kind of lackluster early middle game play. Okay, so how can we keep black's advantage to a minimum here? Well, little Astric was probably just trying to play queen g4 and mate on g7. But his opponent knew better. Okay, so probably best is some combination of either e4 or knight f6, bishop f6, e4, bishop e7, a4, f5, and e5. And okay, I mean, black does have this great diagonal, but white has a good outpost for c4, on c4 for his knight. And this bishop, while it's technically a good bishop because these pawns are on light, it doesn't really have much scope because of these pawns, which are strong. And so white should be only slightly worse. I mean, black does have a possibility to maybe play g5 and open up the king side, but white can kind of understand that that's coming, he can probably prevent it. Why let black play f5? Well, you don't want to play f5 yourself, right? Because then you open up this whole diagonal. But yeah, I mean, black is definitely for choice. There's no doubt about it. But you kind of have to keep black's advantage to a minimum. And as you see, as what happens in the game, it gets really bad really fast. Okay, so he plays e4, take, he takes with a pawn, which is okay. Okay, but now after f5, it's getting a little problematic. So now the problem is, if white tries to play e5 right away, what does black have here? Well, here, black has a thematic g5, which kind of just rips open white's king side. And now if you play g3, you can play queen c6, threatening mate. Then if you play knight f3, I can simply take here, and white's lost. So instead, you have to take and then play e5. But now, after g5 anyway, okay, this is already getting problematic, but how can white kind of stem the bleeding and not have to make further concessions? So in this position, the pawn that white needs to keep is the e pawn. So exactly right. Queen h5, ef4, or gf4, and rook a e1. And yeah, again, black is definitely doing quite well here, but there's no immediate win for black here. I mean, these pawns aren't really so great. And you can kind of cobble together a defense on the king side, and this knight could be hopping into places eventually. So maybe this bishop comes back out to here. and okay white. He's kind of piecing things together with some duct tape. Okay, but after g3, unfortunately, he weakens this diagonal. So now after take, queen c6, all of a sudden, white's kind of mated. White's kind of mated. So, okay, I mean, he gets out of it with knight f3. Okay. So now, what should black do here to try to win by force? Okay, so by the way, notice queen f3 loses 2. Queen's moving sideways, queen
check.
d6 check, and now the queen drops. Okay, so knight f3, and then how should black get his pieces into the game? Yeah, very simply, he wants to move his rooks to the g file. So king h8, king f2, pretty much forced. Rook g8, queen e2, rook g4, king e1, rook f4. And now black's won a pawn, in addition to having a tremendous attack. And victory shouldn't be far off. And really, I don't think there's anything white could have done to stop this, because otherwise just double and rook g2 is deadly. Okay, so rook f7 was what black played instead, which kind of wastes a move. Because ideally he wants to put rooks on g8 and g7, so if he did it this way, he could have done it a little faster, because he gains a tempo with rook g8. Okay, so putting some dancing shoes on with the king, rook g7, rook g1. Okay, now what should black do? So here, well, don't forget I can take with check if you take on g1. So it doesn't actually win anything. So the right move is actually to play rook g4. The idea is to play queen h6 Higgs, but you want to play rook g4 first, so there's no rook takes g7 check. Yeah, so rook g4. So now obviously you can't take because take and then this battery is too much, especially considering this is happening. So queen e2, now queen h6, and now this pawn is virtually indefensible. So rook h1, queen f4, rook ag1, bishop f3, queen f3, queen d2.
Check.
This is pretty much GG. You lose all your pieces. I mean, king f1 is basically forced. Now, I mean, pretty much anything wins. You can play like rook f8 or something. But okay. So black instead played rook g6. And now he's giving white a sliver of hope. A sliver. So what should white do to kind of pounce on this opportunity? Okay, well, he should take.
Check.
Now, black does not want to take with the queen, because if he does, then white can force a trade of queens, which would be like a godsend. No more attack anymore. So he has to take with the pawn. And now queen e2 and rook h1. And suddenly, white's okay. White is actually okay. Because this queen and this bishop alone can't do anything. This bishop is actually not too useful. And this rook is better than this rook. And white, as long as he keeps his rook on the h file, it's actually not clear how black would make progress here. Okay, but white missed that opportunity to play queen e2. And now again, rook g4 is strong for the same reasons as before. King f7 getting ready to double is fine. It's better to do it now than never. But okay, so now take. And now rook h1 again would be really strong, because again, you don't want to allow a rook to the h file, because this rook will come into h3 and wreak havoc. But ace unfortunately plays rook g1, which is not the best. Wow. That's awesome. Okay. So rook h8, e6 check. Okay, now this is tricky, right? So what's going on here? Right. So queen takes e6, loses g6. True. But black's not out of the woods yet, right? Or sorry, white's not out of the woods yet. Because take,
check,
and say king, I don't know, king d7. No, maybe king f7 even. And okay, I mean, white is still worse because of this guy. White is still worse because of this guy. But it's better than what happened in the game for black, because he played king g7. And now, yeah, so now white has actually a way to miraculously force a draw here through some clever tactics. Do you guys see how white can force a draw? Well, rook takes g6 just hangs a rook. So that doesn't draw. Don't forget I have rook h2 at the end, Alex. So you're losing a piece at the end of all that. Rook g6, king g6, knight e5, king g7, knight c6, rook h2 first. Then I take on e2, then I take on c6. Yeah. But yeah, knight d4 does draw. Okay. So the point is that if take,
check,
bishop f6, so if the king moves, if it moves to g8 for example, you can just take on g6 with check, and then take on h8 and be on exchange. If king h7, again, you could probably just take on h8 and then play queen e5 check and be in good shape. But bishop f6,
check,
take, queen e5,
check,
king e7, and now queen g7,
check,
king d6, queen e5,
check,
king e7, queen
check,
d7 draw. So notice if you take on h8, it's still a draw, but now black can force it with queen f3, e3. So for example, if you take here, queen f3,
check,
queen e3,
check,
and now if you go this way, I can take with check. So you have to go this way, and then we just repeat. So black tried
check,
rook h2 first, and now where does the king go? Only one possibility. So you have to make sure this queen cannot be captured with check. So you've got to go to f1. Yep. Okay, so take on d4.
check,
Take on d4, check. Take
check,
on f6, check. And now you can take the rook. Okay, so now white's ahead in material, but this is still a draw. This is still a draw because
check,
queen f3 check, and now if queen f2, simply queen d1, queen f3,
check,
queen d1,
check,
queen f3.
check.
Okay. So white tried king e1, and now
Check.
queen e3 check. Now notice if king d1, this mates,
check,
right? Because now the king is stuck. You have to play queen e2. So white is forced to go king f1. And now black should simply repeat, because white is up material. But black thought he deserved more and went for
check.
queen c1 check. And now white actually wins, but it's tricky because a lot of pawns follow check. Okay, so king f2. Okay, so now white takes c2 with check.
Check.
So black takes c2 with check. White only has one move. He has to defend this queen. So king g3 is forced.
Check.
Queen takes d3 check. And now where does the king go? Yeah, it's gotta go into the light, my child. It's gotta go to h4. It's actually safe here. It's actually relatively safe. Looks dangerous, but white's gonna start generating threats of his own soon. For example, queen b2 is a big problem, followed by queen e5. So black plays queen d8, which is clever. He's trying to set up some sort of discovery, and also maybe queen h8 check, depending on what white does. So what should white do here? Yeah, so simplest moves are best here. So defending this pawn is actually best with queen e2. Then a possible line would go like bishop e4, rook d1, queen c7, queen d2 check,
Check.
king e6, and now, believe it or not, king g5 actually, just to simply try to take this pawn. And this queen covers a lot of key squares. So you have queen e7,
Check.
queen f7.
Check.
Now you're running out of checks because I can always block now. So that would have been best.
Check.
Okay, but he played queen b2, which is not bad.
Check.
Okay, but now king takes e6 is check. Don't forget. Discovery. So white blocked with the rook. But now, if black simply plays this move, it's actually hard for white to make progress here because this rook is pinned. Okay, we have 12-1 lag, but the rook on g5 is pinned, and the queen by itself can't do much, and the bishop can defend black's pawns well. So white eventually at some point would have to go king g3, but then he exposes himself to checks on the third rank. Okay, so the lag's over. But yeah, this is actually putting his rook in a precarious position. Okay. But instead of king f7, white got it easy because black offers a trade of queens, which white should accept or decline. Well, pretty obvious he should accept it.
Check.
Because now this endgame is fairly easily won. And we'll just look at the technique. So first activate your rook, important. Okay, rook c3, good. Now has the whole c file. Defend the pawn. Put pawns on dark. Okay, rook c5, attack the pawn. Okay, he could have gone rook c4 here and just won the pawn right away, but okay,
Check.
he did it a little fancier.
Check.
He won this pawn, then he won this pawn.
Check.
Then of course, he took on f5 because who needs an ace rook? And here, black resigned. So, not quite a swindle on the level of his 5-minute/1 minute games, but certainly a game he did not deserve to win. But his opponent, part of the reason his opponent didn't take the draw, I think, was psychological. Because I'm fairly sure his opponent thought that he was winning at some point, which he was. And so it's often hard to kind of accept the fact that you have blown the position and kind of take a draw when you've won at some point. But you always have to kind of evaluate the position objectively. And he didn't. Yeah. So that was a young e-stroke. But also his opponent was a couple hundred points higher rated than him, so it's probably another reason why. Okay, so we'll look at one more. It's time from the black side. Okay. So this one is interesting. When was this? A few years ago. When he was in high school. Okay. So we have a G3 opening. Oh, sorry. It was, 3 years ago. 3 years ago. Okay. So. Okay. So, white's kind of playing a bit of a hyper-modern opening with G3 and bishop G2. Black is playing very classically, just developing his knights, getting center control. So what move makes the most sense here? Well, you might as well take the whole center with D5, sure. Yeah, and now it's kind of like black's playing white and white's playing black in a way. Because this is the type of opening that it seems like white should get in the opening, not black. So neglecting center control can often lead to a disadvantage right out of the opening. Notice that a natural move like bishop c5 actually runs into this move, even here. And then the point is, if knight takes e5, d4 is a good version of the little fork trick. So say bishop f2,
Check.
king f2, knight e5, and rook f1. And here white has the two bishops and is actually doing okay, because he's going to castle by hand next. But d5 should be played. Okay, but instead black did play bishop c5. And so knight takes e5 is possible here, and is probably the best move. Okay, we play knight c3, castle, knight a4, trying to get this bishop, retreating it. Okay, so now, of course, d5 makes a lot of sense. Will our Patzer play it? You bet. So, black is doing quite well here, I'd say. This knight kind of looks a little odd. Okay, so c3 is not the best move, because what should black play here? Yeah, so c3 simply takes away all the knight squares. So, free piece with b5. Yeah, now knight's in the trap. You just win a piece. So, when you're playing an opponent who, puts a piece on the rim and neglects to give it a method of retreat, always look for ways of maybe attacking it, even if it looks, a bit unconventional. Because, b5 is not a move you normally play, but you should always be on the lookout for this, because, if you don't do it now, the opponent might play b4 or something next and you'll never get a chance. Okay, but black just continues developing like nothing happened. And of course, now white plays b4, realizing his knight was in the tarp. Now black's like, wait, I can do it now. And this is actually a good move. So, kudos to him for playing it, but better late than never. Alright, so knight c5. Take, h6, trying to unpin, push b3. Okay, so now what should black do here? Black still is doing quite well. All of white's pieces are a little misplaced. He has double pawns that are somewhat unhealthy. White still is not really controlling the center. But how should black take advantage? So what he should try to do is he should try to target this pawn. The way to target this pawn is to remove its defender. And the way to remove its defender is play knight g4. So the idea is you just want to take on e3 and play queen e7 and just win this pawn. And a move like d4 weakens c4 so that you can hop a knight into c4. So knight g4 would have made a lot of sense. Is a5 an idea? Sure. Although I think you want to put the knight on a5 in some positions, like if white ever plays d4, for example. So I don't think you want to do that just yet. I mean, I guess you could always play a4, but on a5, if I play a4, I'm not sure that you want to create a pass pawn on b4 just yet. It might be a bit premature. So I think you kind of want to clarify the center first, but eventually maybe. Eventually. Okay, so he played queen d7, which is a normal move. Okay, d4, e4, knight d2, bishop h3. So this is technically your bad bishop, which is not a bad idea to trade it off. Okay, castle a6. I mean, a5 makes sense too, but maybe he was just scared of this pawn. A6 is perfectly logical as well. Okay, f3, take.
Check.
Take. Rook e8, good move. Getting on this e-file. The real problem with white's position is this e2 pawn. It's backward on an open file. So black immediately takes advantage, and this is a very good move. Queen c1. Okay, so what should black play here? Well, now again, this move knight g4 is quite strong because it just wins a pawn. Just wins a pawn. So knight g4, the bishop has to move, and then we can just simply take on e2. So, let's see if our Patzer found it. Well, indeed he did. All right, so this is looking really, really nice for black. Really nice for black. Okay, so he plays bishop f4, and now. Does anyone see what's happening? Because black is completely winning here. Utterly winning here. Okay, so rook takes e2. King g1, and then what? So a very nice way to finish the game would be rook takes e2,
Check.
king g1, and now knight takes h2. Pretty much is GG. The idea is this knight is clearing the way for this queen to come to h3 and then to checkmate on g2. So, I mean, if you take, like queen h3, threatening this and this, so the only way to defend is to play rook f2. Now I simply take on f2, I take on h2.
Check.
So I won my piece back, and now I'm almost mating by force. Just going to put a rook on e8, threaten queen e2 mate, queen h5, and rook e2 is also coming. Just all sorts of bad news. But this is a cute idea that you guys would do well to remember. So knight takes h2 here is super strong. Okay, so let's see what happened in the game. I mean, rook e2 at the very least should be played, right? Because you win a pawn with check. I mean, that is what we should do. Okay, but he played g5, which I'm not sure why, but this is not nearly as strong. Because it basically forces white to sacrifice, which is something he kind of wants to do anyway. So now after the forced sacrifice, take... What should black do here? Black should do the exact same thing. He should take on e2 and take on h2. Exact same thing works. Yeah, okay, but he took on g5.
Check.
And now after queen g5, now all of a sudden it's not so clear that black is winning as easily as he was. Okay, so king h8 forced.
Check.
Queen h5. King g7. And now, how can white draw here? Well, queen g5 doesn't quite work. Queen g5 doesn't quite work because if I can eventually block with the knight on h6 is the point. So actually, in this position,
check.
Black should have played king h7 here so that he can block with the knight on h6.
Check.
But in this position, white can draw here. Yeah, sorry. King h7 would have been better. I misspoke. Okay, so the way to draw is play knight h4. The point is basically want to put the knight on f5. So black can play knight e3 check.
Check.
But he can't really take the rook. And so here he'd have to play something like f5. And then just queen g6.
Check.
And queen h5.
Check.
Draws. Because if you ever play this move, I can play knight g6, take on h7, take on f8, check, and then move my rook. So this would have led to a draw. Okay, but white played this move, knight g5. And now white's dead. How does black win? How does black win? Congrats. So rook e2, king moves, and then what? Because white is threatening this mate. So we have to do something about queen h7 mate. Yeah, very good. Nope, very bad. Nope, very bad. So rook h8 actually loses. The keepsake was right originally. It's rook
Check.
e2 and rook h2. And now the rook covers this square. And to top it off, the queen is actually trapped. To top it off, the queen is actually trapped. Yeah. So, unfortunately, black played
Check.
knight e3. And now actually, after this move, black is completely lost. black is completely lost because there's no way to stop queen h7. So for example, king h1, knight f5 to try to just block. Queen h7,
Check.
king f6, just g4 to win this knight. King e7, rook f5, etc. So now the material's even, but now white has a tremendous attack on this f7 square. Okay, but instead, after king g1, black played an even worse move, rook h8. Now is unfortunately completely dead because white can simply take on f7 and just win every piece. So this position, black
Check.
wait a minute, rook f7, queen f7, and knight f7. Okay, I cannot explain this. Cannot explain this for the life of me. I have no idea why he didn't play this move. But he played this move, and now black wins because this is hanging. So now black's just up a rook and a knight for nothing. So knight f7 not best. Yeah, I just forgot about his queen. Okay, so take, and then I'll just show you guys the rest of the game.
Check.
Black actually did quite well. He mated fairly quickly. So
Check.
check,
Check.
check,
Checkmate.
and mate. So black played really well, except for one move, 2 moves, and then he should have gotten mated. And then black. So that's it for Patzer's Playground, episode 21.